larger plan. So I prefer also bottom up, but you see it's not purely bottom up. If you just tell them, go and get us a plan, it's going to be worthless. I mean, honestly. I mean, they may have plans that they will organize their work a little bit, but it won't help the unit. There has to be that alignment that we talked about earlier, you know, in terms of what are we measuring, for example, in a particular goal. Everyone has to be aligned along those for it to have an effect. Okay, any questions on this so far? Oh, I've taken a lot longer than I expected to. Katie, what's
Totally fine.
Okay, all right. Let me just go through and I'm probably talking too much about each of these aspects. Let me just go quickly through communication. Very, very important at all times during the plan. And it's not just communication. Again, most people think of communication just within the college. That's absolutely obvious. But it's communication to build support among stakeholders, donors, alumni. Things you may not think of. There's a board in your unit. That board has to be connected. Usually it's nothing more than the form of a report. In most cases you won't get a whole lot back from them, honestly, because they don't know your business as well as you do. But it's the support that comes in. With donors it becomes incredibly important because they start to see, again, I have actually a specific example of a situation that I can talk about later, of where we got a big gift to the speed school because we had engaged a donor with a plan. And somebody who had never given before. Because what they see is, you know, they're usually very successful people. And when they're giving the money, they want to be sure that it's going to have an impact in whatever their particular passion is. And they usually are just listening. And then when they see that connection, that's when they start to explore with you. So this strategic plan gives a tremendous framework for donor relations and building support among the donor base. There's nothing more powerful than that, in my view, than a strategic plan. So communications to just about everybody you can think of. In a public university, it's important to get it to government officials, you know, and you don't have to send. If you send copies of it, that's okay, most of them will read it. But every time you go for a meeting, you take a copy with you. And it's not obvious. You just sort of say, you know, hey, I want to show you what I'm talking about here. This is part of our plan. And then they start to get interested. You know, they see that there is actually a blueprint by which you're operating. Okay, accountability. Accountability in the planning process, I'm talking about. Incredibly important. Timelines will slip away like nobody's business if you don't hold them. And then it becomes, that's where you have to show strong, disciplined leadership. You know, you have to hold people who report to you accountable and make sure that things are delivered on time. And move on to the next step if they're not, and they'll be left behind, and then they'll quickly realize that this is serious. Okay? So accountability is very important because these things can drag on. And I'll give you the perfect example with the 21st Century University. Budget allocations. Now this is another thing, I think it's covered in your book somewhere when we're reading about alignment of budget and finances with planning objectives. So you can, sometimes budget planning and resource generation is done with strategic planning. This is in my view, that makes it too complex, quite honestly. It's important to do it, but budget planning, in my view, in an academic institution, should really be looked at from the point of view of the responsibility of the finance and budget folks to find the money to support the academic mission, all right? So you don't limit your vision by saying we don't have money for this and we don't have money for that. Because if you do that, you're not going to have any plan at the end. Because they'll tell you, oh, where are we going to find the money? We don't have the money. Those of you in finance and budgeting here, I apologize, but that's sort of where it ends up usually, because it makes it hard for them to try and find money to support this. So what you do is you do your academic planning first, or your unit planning first, purely from the concept level of what is important in the institution. Then you follow that up with a clear phase with the finance and budget folks and the leadership, the appropriate administrator, in developing a budget structure that supports that. Okay, I like to do it separately. Some people do it together. When we did our 2020 plan, I wasn't here, but I believe that they were done together. And actually, when I read that plan before I got here, I was very impressed with what had been accomplished. Okay, something didn't quite turn out the way they were supposed to, but still, it was a tremendous accomplishment. I've always done them separately. And typically what you will run into is practical difficulties. Because I've found that budgeting systems usually are archaic, they don't provide the right information, then you start arguing about which number is right. So you don't want to sort of contaminate that process, that exciting process of visioning and all that with that stuff. So you separate that out, and then you get the administrative types to do that. Because at that point, it's all sort of technical, it's all mechanical. Okay, and then measures. Measures I gave an example for you. Measures are very important. But I have another sort of thought about how to structure strategic plans. Often you will see a scorecard. All right, we often have, I think you may have one in this college, a scorecard, just about every college has. We want a graduation rate to go from 6-year graduation to go from 55 to 57 in 2 years. And then, you want to accomplish that goal, but you don't see how you're going to do that. You may say, well, we're going to try better teaching, better advising, and that's it. And everybody goes home. And then at the end of the year, everyone's looking, and then you go to the IR person, and you tell them, heck, why didn't we get to 57? Implying that you didn't count it right. You didn't really do anything to get up to 57. You just said you were going to do it, and you talked about these vague sort of objectives. Very important, and I'm a big believer in this, that for every goal that you have to identify specific initiatives for which people are responsible that support movement in that goal. And that actually is the focus of the implementation, not tracking the number. What we end up doing in strategic planning is we do all this stuff, and then we just put the scorecard out and we start to track the numbers going up and down. In most cases, it's just fortuitous that it's going up. Many times it's just going up and down. When it's going up, we say, hey, it's going up, then we get out, oh, a bad year. And it's going up again. Because we're not doing anything deliberate to change those numbers, right? So it's really about thinking about those objectives. So if you want a 6-year graduation rate, you may have to do half a dozen things underneath that to move that number. And that's where you need a lot of expertise, all right? And so you would put that in there. That's where the real thinking comes in. So you have to have, so when I talk about measures, I really talk about measures that are underpinned with initiatives, major initiatives to drive those measures. The fewer the measures, the better. If you have a list that's 6 pages long, it's a perfect cover to not get anything accomplished. All right, so you want just a few that really matter. That's all you want.
And Dr. Pinto,
Yeah.
would you say that when you have, if we have a 10-year strategic plan, let's say, you have, an end goal, but breaking that out into so if we want the 6-year graduation rate to be X by the end of this 10-year cycle, but what do we want it to be along the way? So more the targets that go along with the measures, right? Because we know, we want to hit certain points at certain times.
Right, yes. I would actually, since you brought up 10 years, I would not recommend planning for that length of time. To me, it's sort of meaningless. I would not recommend anything over 5 years. 5 years is a good number, I think. Even 5 years is sort of hard to extrapolate out, but you still have to have aspirations. If you want to, if you have some goals you want, you have to have them high, and you've got to give yourself enough time to go in there. But when you go into plans that are too long, quite honestly, you run out of steam about halfway, and then it becomes an embarrassment because nobody's excited. You remember what I talked about? It's about excitement. It's that part of it that is important. It has to be fresh. It has to be new. Around 5 years is when the energy disappears around it and you have to think about something again. That's how I think of it. Okay. I think I covered, and you need good data, by the way. That's not as simple as it sounds. I'll just finish this and I'll get you the rest. No, you're fine. I just don't want to forget this. Good data is very important. It has to be good. It has to be sort of, the quality of it has to be good. So when you're arguing about the value about whether it's correct or not. More importantly, in this day and age, it has to be at your fingertips. And everyone should be seeing the same thing. That is incredibly important. And we have a deficit here on that, which we are now addressing, which we have actually made a huge jump on to implementing a new software system. But that is incredibly important. Because data, and they have to be vetted, they have to be agreed upon, they have to be correct, and they have to be easily accessible. And everybody has to agree on what those metrics are. Okay. Yes, you are?
Nicole.
Nicole?
So say if you run out of steam on a plan, or it's just too extended, and you said that you just kind of have to start over, do you just abandon those goals and initiatives?
No, you don't. And I'll come back to our 21st Century University and give you an example. But very quickly, what we did here, and I thought it was a pretty good strategy, like halfway through, we put in another plan that supports that plan. But that gave us also a way to readjust the numbers to what was realistic.
Okay.
So the
you don't-
21st Century Plan that I talked about is not actually a new plan by itself. It's just a set of initiatives that supports the overarching 2020 plan. The 2020 plan is 12 years long. It started in 2008. So we quickly realized when we got to, started 2008, 2012, we weren't going to make those goals that we had for 2020, because one of the assumptions we had was that the state would put new money into the university, which they never did. Because 2008, we had the recession, so the state ran out of money. And so one of the big assumptions of the plan, was wrong. So we were never going to get to that. Like PhDs, number of PhD degrees. I mean, we're supposed to be at twice of what there's no way we're going to get to that. So it gives you a chance to reassess. So I would say abandon it unless there is new leadership. If there is new leadership, then you have to make a decision. Even then, it's not required to do that. You want to refresh on it, but I would say that it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of resources to do strategic planning. So it has to be thought through carefully. It's not an easy yes or no answer.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah,
But you would not, if you have good goals, going back I think to the other part of your question, if you have good goals, you would not abandon those goals. You may just change the way you want to approach based on what you've learned. You want to approach attainment of those goals. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? All right, I'm going to switch very quickly here to just execution, and this will be very short. Execution, of course, is incredibly important. Okay, and in a large unit, I would say the most important thing to do is put someone in charge of execution. At this point, if you're a leader of a fairly large unit, it's impractical for you to be leading the execution. So you need to put someone else in charge. And typically one level down from you, you would put someone in there who would actually be in charge. That may not be his or her only job, but that would be an important part of what they do. So they do all types of things associated with that plan. All right, first of all, they remind everybody on a regular basis, if you have regular department head meetings and stuff, they remind you, this is where we are, this is what we've done. They communicate in all ways, not just internally, but externally as well. There's periodic reports that would go out. For example, if you're a department chair, that communication would go to the dean, it would be copied to the provost, so that they know that this is a department that's active. You use it for advertising, actually, for your department. That we're active, we're energized, we're doing a lot of things here. And it's a succinct way of reporting what you're doing, okay? And if it's in alignment with their plan, they love it, right? So that becomes important. It becomes important to have someone in charge of it, always put someone in charge of it, and make sure that they follow through, so they give you regular updates and all that. It's very important to have accountability from people who report to you on that. And so the accountability, often what's done is, the way that you do this is, you put it in their annual evaluations. So the goals for the strategic plan, whatever they're responsible for, you put it in their annual evaluations. I don't think that's enough, actually. If you're not if you don't have a good department head or a good dean or a provost, it's easy to dodge that one meeting if you haven't accomplished the goals, right? I mean, you can say, oh, well, this went wrong. And it's so far after the fact that, you have little to say as their supervisor on what you could have done right. This is the part that's very important. You have regular meetings with that person. You require that the agenda be structured around their strategic plan. So they report, if you have a weekly meeting, they report every week. They don't report on all of it, but they give you an update on a monthly basis. Usually when I meet with reports like that, on a monthly basis, and I only discuss one or two things. And then you connect that in this is really, really important. It takes time, especially if you're really busy, you have a lot of responsibility, it becomes hard, but it's very important to be disciplined about doing this. You look to see what really matters. You know, an academic institution should always be asking the question, is this making a difference for the students? So if you have a student success initiative, for example, and you look at 6-year graduation rate, that's for the good of the student, but it's so divorced from the student's real everyday classes that really doesn't impact the student at that point, right? But what does impact is the quality of teaching. So the metric actually that's linked to that has an influence on that, is how good are the faculty in that department. So you make an evaluation, so you don't have to go just with the metric of the strategic plan, but you go with the meaningful one that's having an impact on a daily basis. So on a regular basis, every semester, I would go through with every department chair, every teaching evaluation. I would devote one meeting just to go through those. And we would actually, not so much with the idea of embarrassing people who are not good teachers, but what are we going to do to help this person? Because they may be teaching 60 students that semester and they're lousy, right? So what are we going to do that another 60 doesn't come through there and 30 of them drop out? That's the sort of metric that so you have to think not only of the strategic plan metric, but everything underneath it that's meaningful on a daily operation. So what I'm saying with this is you have to make that plan a living document as a leader. If you don't, nobody else will. Okay, and it's not just the metrics at the highest level. It's those sub-measures that really matter. And then you have to have a good, and I forgot by the way, when you launch a new plan, it has to be a big launch. Got to be a big, just like it's a big beginning, it has to be a big finish. So we're launching this plan now we're getting to the execution phase. Very important to make a lot of noise around it. When you're executing, very important for the person who's leading to report annually on it. Very, very important. Make that a big deal. Right? Very, very important. So that's sort of the fabric of that I use for the planning that I do. Did you want to give them a break here?
Is it about break time now? Yes. All right.
No? Did I go too early?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
5-10 minutes. All right.
This part won't take very long. Why not?
Okay.